Hello and welcome to the Captain Bob Flight Sim podcast. Today we're going to be talking about how I made my simulator plans for the construction of its body, basically. So, as you might know if you follow the Captain Bob Flight Sim YouTube channel, I'm using Fusion 360. It's a pretty powerful CAD program, and it can be put into the hands of basically beginners, and you can really learn how to use it and learn how to use the tool to make your structure. I've heard a lot of other programs that people use, so a lot of people have been using FreeCAD for their simulator shells, and I think the Warthog project uses FreeCAD. You can use Onshape. Dark Arrow making an airplane is actually using Onshape, and it's online, so it's very cloud-based, as well as Fusion 360 cloud-based. And you can also use Blender. I'm going to talk a little bit about Blender in a second. See, I even have it on my outline now. I'm going to talk a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages of Blender versus Fusion 360, because I have used both, though I am much more experienced in Fusion 360. All of my plans, just for reference, you can download from the GitHub. If there's show notes, the GitHub will be in the show notes. And basically what you can do is you can download the .step file, and the .step file will be compatible with most CAD programs. It's pretty much universal. I think I've done .step files with FreeCAD, and you can also open them with SolidWorks. Yeah, I totally neglected SolidWorks. SolidWorks exists too. I've used it, and I can't say I'm a fan, but I also can't say it was an awful experience. I prefer Fusion 360, but that's probably just because I'm intoxicated with it or something. So, there are a few things with CAD. You gotta know if you're gonna go with CAD all the way or CAD after. There are a few different ways of doing it. I'm doing the CAD all the way type of deal, where I'm designing the shell first, and then designing components inside the shell, and just kind of hope they fit, cross your fingers. But a lot of people I know do the simulator face first, the instrument panel, and I see advantages to both of these. The instrument panel can be done first, and you know for sure it's gonna fit. And if you do the instrument panel first, you also know that it's also easier to work on just the instrument panel before all of the shell is in place. So if you're doing your first simulator, I might actually recommend doing your instrument panel, first. With the shell, it gets in the way, it's big, and you don't guarantee it fits. But I really wanted my simulator to have structure to it and basically be a working airplane inside of a model. I don't know if that really makes sense, but basically my opinion is, if you're a beginner and you just want a panel, then make the panel first and maybe grow from there. But even if you're not a beginner, let's be honest, that way is a good way to go. But if you're insane like me, you might consider going down the route of really making the shell. The interesting part about this is that you have a lot of guesswork. So I'm going to go show you how to do some of the guesswork right now. So there are a few places you can get reference images for the shell, and I'm going to tell you that the first one is the POH. If you open up the POH, the first picture you'll likely find is a nice little picture of the airplane, and usually a top view and a front view. These are great views to have if you're designing your flight simulator. I haven't confirmed all POHs have them, but most of the ones I've looked through have the three views, And those are really helpful for reference images. Now you can also find pictures. I'm not going to recommend this one completely because every time you take a picture, most people aren't completely thinking about, or I would honestly recommend taking your own pictures because random photographers aren't likely, let's get this exactly centered and horizontal, and let's make sure that the midpoint of the propeller is with our in the field of view, and then if it's even at a like 3 degree angle, the picture can really be messed up and kind of mess up your actual simulator design. So I wouldn't really go off of pictures. It's just a weird, you can go down the rabbit hole of picture stuff and find that some pictures have like picture effects that make the images not reliable. So I don't know, randomly you'll be like, oh, this warped, the kind of like fisheye effects, stuff like that. It's not really the best way to go down, but if you have an airplane that's not well documented, it might certainly be the most helpful. So yeah, basically what you want is an orthographic view. I think this is the one you want, but just like a blueprint, you would want a side view, a top view, and a front view. And if you can get more views than that, like one from the bottom or one from the back, that would be super helpful because you can kind of interpolate things from there. Now, I would like to say, how can you actually figure out how to dimension the images? I know that's a big concern. So the best way, I think, in Fusion 360 at least, would be to calibrate the image using basically right-click the canvas and then calibrate it to give it a certain dimension. I'm sure you have fairly similar things in other programs that allow you to have canvases, but basically you can find the most of the dimensions again in the POH. There's usually I think it's called general dimensions page. So it'll be like from the wingtip with strobe, or from the wingtip strobe to the other wingtip strobe is 36.1 inches on the Cessna 172. I think it's like 33 inches on the 150. But you can use those images, scale up the image to that size, and then get sketching from there. You can also do the same thing from the front, and the nice thing about this is you can use you can use the same dimension on multiple pictures, because if it has two sides, you can use the wing on the front view and the top view, which is kind of handy. Just make sure your aspect ratio is locked if it has the ability to be unlocked, so you don't make a simulator that looks like a school bus. Okie dokie. So I just told you how you can kind of get images, but let's be honest, some people might not want to make their own plans. So you might want to buy plans. There are a few places you can buy plans, but most people that make a simulator like this don't really, in my experience, share their plans, which is okay. It's their work, but it can be hard to find them. I would honestly recommend going onto forums and just searching up plans in like the little search bar. That might be the most helpful. Also, Googling your airplane, like plans, and go from there. Or even your airplane simulator plans. This is kind of your research project though, because I can't unfortunately give a resource to every single airplane in existence, because that would be a lot of searching for, and I don't think we have that much time on the podcast to go through every single airplane in existence. So yeah, if you can find plans, that's a bargain, a steal. If you're looking into modifying plans, you might want to make sure that you can. So you have the 3D models for them, if you're allowed to, or if that's in the plans, that would be awesome. But you can't always do that, so I guess it's okay. As for plans, DIY or 737 DIY Sim or Carl from YouTube has all of his plans online. You can buy them, and it's not that expensive. Another 737 is Mikey's Flight Deck. You can become a member for, it's not too expensive, but that's another great service. And then the Warthog Project has a link to where he got his plans, so I know you can do that. And then I think there are some other F-18 ones, but that's basically all I found. Okay, so one thing right here that's really fun can be RC plans. RC plans could be really good for reference because RC plans allow you to basically get the front image, but not one front image, multiple front images that you can loft together. It's super brilliant. Someone, I think Anko, came up with this in one of the comments on my CAD video. But basically, what you do is you find the profile of a RC plane, and then use that as a reference point in space and kind of form your model around it, however you want to do that. Let's see. So yeah, there are a few different things you can do. The RC plans, I would recommend those a lot to you, and usually they come with a front view and a side view anyways, so why not? Now you also have to know about your tolerances, because if you're going to the nearest millimeter, I like saying that, then you're going to have to really find extremely detailed plans, if not take actual dimensions from actual airplanes, which can be a huge time-pressured activity, I guess. And I don't think you're going to get accurate dimensions, like to the millimeter. From a real airplane, I can't think about how you do that. And yeah, even then, you're not going to get it perfect. So I think, for me, a good tolerance is about 2 inches. So 1 inch on each side, and that is a tolerance I'm okay with. Of course, I don't know if I've actually hit it, but that's what I kind of think about wanting. So if something's off by like an inch or two on each side, I'm okay. So 4 inches. That's not ideal, but I can deal with it. So yeah. So just think about your expectations and go from there. I would like to talk a little bit about extracting 3D models, because I think that is something that's really smart to do. If someone did the work for you, you can get that 3D model, convert it into your CAD program, and then go from there. Live a little. But basically, Maker's Muse did a video about extracting 3D models. I've never really tried this, but I would love to. I'll put a link in the show notes, I think. In the podcast player, there should be a little link. If there's not, you can go over to the website. I think captainbobsim.com/podcast should have a list of the podcast posts, basically. So yeah. Go over to... So that Maker's Muse video basically took a model from a video game, converted it to a printable format, and then 3D printed it. And you can do a pretty similar thing. You can take the model from the video game, put it into your CAD program, and then make a simulator out of it. I thought that was pretty genius, and this might work, might not, so just keep that in mind. And also, video game planes aren't constructed to the same exact tolerances as the Cessna, or as your simulator might be, so just keep that in mind. They're probably not going in there with a measuring tape and a caliper. You can tell in the virtual cockpit some of the things aren't really dimensionally accurate. So this one take with a grain of salt. And there's also, you can dig through the files in X-Plane and find STLs. I haven't really tried this very much enough to know, but it might be something worth looking into, and make sure it's legal, whatever you do. There are a few sites that you can find STLs, and honestly, if someone did the work for you, go ahead and build off of it. If someone puts the work out into the world, you don't have to start from scratch. Though I guess I kind of did, so I guess I'm a hypocrite. But some of the sites you can find 3D models are Thingiverse, GrabCAD, and Yegi, and I found great Cessna designs on all 3 of them. Yegi is more of a compilation, so it grabs files from lots of places, and if you spend, and it might even be worth buying a file, because then once you have bought that file, you can really get it and just go from there. You don't have to do all of the work of modeling the airplane perfectly. I've seen a model for $100, and I've already worked probably 35 hours on my Cessna 172, so I don't know how you want to factor that in. So technically I would have saved money if I just went in and bought that thing and then put it into CAD, but of course, take everything with a grain of salt. I really enjoyed learning how to model the airplane. It took me way too long and a lot of failures. Probably more like 50 hours than 30. So yeah, you might need patience. I just worked on it over the course of probably 2 or 3 months. So probably 4 months actually. So yeah, just know kind of what you're getting into as well. But yeah, Thingiverse, GrabCAD, and Yeti, those are great ones. The workflow is basically, I got a top sketch, a side sketch, and a front, and there were a few different methods I tried. Of course, I did the block of cheese cookie cutter. I don't know why I called it block of cheese, but I guess that just was tasty at the moment. But it's basically where you draw a sketch and then cut through it as if you're doing a cookie cutter, and then from that piece do another cookie cutter from the front, and then from there do another cutter I cannot say that, from the side. So you have a side, a top, and a front. It'll look super blocky, but I think if you use enough fillets, you can get it super rough to scale. And no one's gonna march into your basement and kick your Cessna because it's not perfectly to scale. This method I just described, not subscribed, I guess. This method I just described really was helpful for me, or would be helpful for me if I was just doing a simple simulator, and I know a lot of people really could care less about how their simulator looks. Another workflow you could do is the same one, top sketch, front sketch, side sketch, but instead you use the form workspace. The form workspace in Fusion 360, and all of these are described in Fusion 360 specifically. I'll talk a little bit about Blender in a moment. No, wrong Blender. But basically, with the form workspace, you can stretch things out like a block of infinite Play-Doh. And then you kind of stretch it out, use T-splines, fancy geometry, learn about angles until your head hurts, and then you can kind of form the simulator around these profiles. And you kind of have to eyeball it if you don't have the RC front profiles that kind of get bigger and smaller as the airplane gets bigger and smaller, if that makes sense. So, yeah. Always make sure to, on the sketches you did, constrain the intersections. This just makes sure that basically your intersections aren't missing each other, and basically that the side of the Cessna on one drawing is the side of the Cessna on the other sketch or other drawing. You might also look into 3D Sketch. I'll look more into this if I redesign my shell, which I don't think I'm going to do because I'm pleased with its result. But 3D Sketch, if you turn that mode on in Fusion 360, you can basically sketch not only left and right, but you can also sketch uh, up and down, and then in the z-axis too. And so you can sketch. So instead of drawing on a piece of paper, you can draw midair however the heck you want. Up, down, forward, backwards, left, right, you name it. It's really helpful for, it might be helpful for this application. Again, I'll have to look more into it. It sounds like a fun idea. I ended up doing all of this, and then I used the loft workflow. So this is the third workflow you can use. Basically, you have the RC profiles that are small, big, maybe get smaller or something. And then you imagine, I guess you imagine you're putting, you imagine you're filling it up and then putting strings between them, if that makes sense. Probably doesn't make sense at all, but imagine you're going from one hoop to the other and then everything in between. It's a really cool tool to use, and it works wonderfully. Make sure to have guides or rails with other sketches so that it doesn't look a little funny. And I described this in, I think, my 4th CAD video. So the 4th CAD video will be in the show notes. Well, it will be now. And again, you can find those on captainbobsim.com/podcast, and then under the podcast list. I believe this is episode like anywhere from 5 to 25. I'm not good with numbers. So yeah, I used the RC profiles, and that gave me a surprisingly good result, and the dimensions were pretty good. Again, the better your sketches are, the better your shape is going to be. So really dial in those sketches and make sure they're as simple as possible. I know those kind of contradict each other, but use T-spline edges and then move the handles of the T-spline so that it matches the shape as best it can. You can also, I haven't looked into this, but now that I think of it, it might be cheating. You can also you can also download the POH as a PDF, convert just that little place into a DXF, edit that DXF, and then use that as a sketch, and that might just be even more realistic. So yeah, there are multiple ways to skin a cat, though you can't do any of them because that's illegal, I think. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about Blender. Making a smoothie. Oh, I can just feel the amount of people watching this drop. Blender is a very powerful modeling program. It's actually a program that a lot of people use to make airplanes. So make add-on airplanes, freeware, payware, and just get the general model. It's really nice because you can model things pretty nicely, I'll say, and it's a very advanced program. Definitely has a learning curve. I've done probably a few hours of I've probably done about 5 to 10 hours, and I still feel like a noob, but of course I do. You can't expect like brilliant results after not a lot of practice. So it's definitely something that comes with practice, but it can be super helpful when it comes to building your model because you can use canvases, and then you can get it as real as you can, and you can do a lot more modeling tools than you can in Fusion 360. Blender is a modeling program, and Fusion 360 is a CAD program, so you have to kind of know how they work with each other. I modeled mine entirely in Fusion 360 just so I wouldn't have any, kind of problems with like exporting between them, but I'm sure you can find a way to work from Blender to Fusion 360. I think exporting an OBJ would be something you could do there. that is about it for all of my CAD advice. I guess I don't have very much, but maybe the podcast episodes will get longer as I get smarter. I hope you all have a fantabulous day. Go ahead and go over to captainbobsim.com/podcasts. Again, that's captainbobsim.com/podcast. It's not plural, by the way. Thank you again, everyone, for watching, and have a fantabulous day. I will see you in the next podcast episode that'll come out sometime, probably May. I don't know. It's an adventure. See ya!